Hello, this is Virtualis the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. Open diagonals to the king are a potential weakness that can be exploited in the opening. I would say that following the typical lines of at least the first few moves of any established good opening would mean that this isn't necessarily an issue. Simply, they wouldn't otherwise be considered good. However, once you're out of the first part of the opening, or if the game deviates into unusual territory, keeping an eye out for these diagonals to the king are really important. In terms of our visual perception, we're simply not as good at seeing diagonals compared to up and down and left and right. I'm going to demonstrate the principle with a very quick game against one of the beginner chess.com robots that played a bad opening, and then in a game against a human opponent. Please enjoy. So I thought we'll quickly just go through the principle with this 5-move checkmate game I had against Jimmy. Jimmy is the 600 ELO 600 rated bot on chess.com, one of their adaptive bots. And I remember when I first started playing on chess.com, I actually had, I think I was able to beat Jimmy without too much problem, but I did have to put quite a lot of effort in, and I did find it a bit of a challenge. And I suppose this is an indication you do get better with time. So I played e4, and Jimmy sort of played this interesting move, h5, which of course isn't particularly good, aim to fight for the center. So whenever you have the opportunity, just try to take full control of the center. So I played d4, and now they played f6. So this diagonal is now potentially open for the opponent, and so potentially, if I could get the bishop onto this square, this would be checkmate. So I decided to play bishop d3. So obviously that's not the most accurate move, though. In this setting, I'm completely already winning, given these funny opening moves by the opponent. Jimmy now plays, d6, and I thought, okay, so they've sort of created an opening square for them, and I thought, yeah, that's fair enough. Let's just be provocative. So I tried to play e5, potentially sort of break open this structure, and now I thought, oh, they blocked their one escape square with a knight move, knight d7. So that's the diagonal, the open diagonal to the king, and here that is checkmate. There's nowhere for the king to go. So 5-move checkmate. But this is the idea that in some of the openings that you play, the diagonal to the king can be open, and that is potentially something that can be exploited. Now let's have a look at the game I played against a real human. Okay, so this is the game. Again, fairly short game. My opponent resigned on move 14. And if we look at the review, you can see this game barely made it out of the opening. Again, some problems with that diagonal in the opening. I played okay, relatively accurately, somewhat less accurately for my opponent. We'll see this blunder in context. So my move with the queen, making use of diagonal, was definitely not the most accurate move. I could have been punished for it. No, early queen moves are still bad, but in this game, my opponent didn't punish me, and I think psychologically it worked very well. Let's now move on to the analysis. So I played with the black pieces in this game. Opponent led with d4, queen's pawn. I respond with d5, and now they play c4. So that's the queen's gambit. Now, one of the things with queen's gambit, of course, is that with c4, this c pawn can no longer go to c3. And so effectively, you weaken that diagonal. Now, at the moment, it's not really a problem for the white king, because other than the queen, you don't necessarily want to defend with the queen. The bishop can defend, and the knight can defend as well. But we'll see what happens, particularly to these pieces, the potential defenders along that dark square diagonal. Now, against the Queen's Gambit, I usually play the Slav Defense, and that's what I do. They played knight c3. I developed knight f6, knight f3, bishop f5. So all very normal Slav defense. Now we exchange. Now, so that c pawn is now, of course, gone. The opponent does an aggressive push, bishop g5. You can see not the most accurate, move. And of course, looking at threatening my knight. And here I decide to move the knight out of the way, counter-attacking that bishop, basically inviting a trade, and a trade is what happens. Now, that knight is also gone. That bishop is kind of out of the way from the defense. So really, apart from the bishop, the queen is left to guard duty on that diagonal. The opponent now undertakes another aggressive push to attack my bishop. And here I thought, okay, what am I going to do about this bishop? Obviously, can't go there. That doesn't make any sense. It would just be taken. Can't go there. That doesn't make any sense. They could potentially just attack it with a pawn. That's not good. No, do I defend? But if they trade, then, I double up a pawn. That's not particularly good either. And then I saw, with this diagonal, that comes with check. And if they do capture, I can capture back because that's a fork. Now, I thought that was pretty clever. So I opted, in fact, to ignore that threat and just develop another piece. So I developed knight c6. Now, the Stockfish didn't actually think that was good. They didn't like that because the early queen moves, they thought that was not as good as simply moving the bishop back. So live and learn, but I think psychologically this still made sense because I thought they probably didn't see that and they were going to take, and they did take, and I've got the queen now, and in this context, the queen was a good move. And what is the opponent going to do? So the most obvious move actually is just to move the queen back to the bishop back to block, or you could block with the queen, inviting a queen trade, but that doesn't really make sense because if I invite a queen trade, I've just lost a straight up piece. So obviously I am going to capture that piece. However, they thought for almost a couple of minutes and actually they moved the queen, inviting a queen trade. Now, one of the things here is now the king and queen are on the same diagonal, and that potentially can cause a threat later on. So capture the knight, no reason not to. They decide to retreat the bishop, bishop e3, which probably wasn't the best move for them. And now what I saw was that if I could get the bishop to this square, it's already defended by the knight, this poor queen will be pinned. So what I decided to do, I thought, again, I was being fairly trappy, fairly tricky. I played e5 immediately. Looks like I'm doing an aggressive attack, and obviously they were thinking aggressively as well. They looked at the position for almost 2 minutes and looks like, if you don't see the diagonal, yeah, that looks like it's okay. You're opening up the file for the queen, blocking what looks like a planned queenside castle, and then they missed it because now here we go, bishop to b4, pinning that poor queen to the king, and it's pretty much kind of over. So they make a move, captures the queen. I think we do another couple of shuffling moves, but basically at this point, the opponent opted to resign. Absolutely dominating position, +8, -8. Basically, I'm playing black. So good game, GG. As we see in the Queen's Gambit, the early move c4 means that this pawn can no longer be part of the defense of the dark square diagonal on the queen side. Once the queenside knight and bishop had also moved for an early attack, this left this diagonal weak. At the beginner intermediate level, there is also a psychological impact. Once I was above 1100 ELO or so on chess.com, most opponents intuitively understood that early queen moves are often bad, outside of established openings like the Scandinavian defense. What this means is that a strike like this is often unexpected and unnerving. In this game, my opponent responded inaccurately to the first diagonal attack and then missed the second devastating attack which pinned their queen to the king. I hope you found this game interesting, and thanks for watching.